1. It's hard to explain, but I was a lonely child. When I was 6, my parents and I moved to a house in a rural state. As soon as we got there, I started experiencing odd things. I remember that during the first few weeks we lived there, I had dreams of ghosts in our front yard. I had dreams around the same time of there being little bogs in our backyard, and voices telling me to come toward it, and being pulled under. I later had graphic dreams of death of loved ones. We moved in January 1997. That same month, my father was hospitalized with pneumonia. The following month, my mother took an overdose and ended up being comatose on a ventilator and nearly died. In April or May, my dog was killed, hit by a car, on the road. We got a bird, who happened to be born on the day my dog died, and a year later, that bird was let loose by accident by a family friend, never to be seen again. I had night terrors. I noticed that a lot of our worst traits as a family and people were heightened while living there. Meaning, for example, if someone was mean, they were meaner there. Whatever their worst trait was heightened. People we knew around us died. I knew a girl local to us who died at 6 of leukemia. Another family friend died from kidney failure. I developed severe anxiety toward the end of our time there that has remained. We moved from there in 2001. I later heard that the former owner had a mentally ill son who was abusive, and that her husband died while living there. My mother became very sickly not long after living in that house, and became progressively ill until she died in 2020. My father struggled more intensely than ever with substance abuse after being there. As I said, I struggle with anxiety. Since then, I've often felt haunted. At night, I often feel I'm being watched by unseen eyes, the dead, that just around the corner of my bedroom await unseen dead things, that winter is the time of the dead. When the dead draw most near and seek to add others to their number. Winter is snow, death, decay, isolation, and loss. Yet outside of a few indirect experiences, I have never beheld the image of a ghost. I have never seen a putrid monster. Sometimes I want to see those dark, dead creatures badly, to truly test my mettle. I have dreams of things that come to be. I have dreams of the past. But I have never truly seen a ghost, sadly. 2. Last night I went down for bed around 3:30. I'm up that late on the regular, and I usually stay down for a few solid hours, wake up for the bathroom, then fall right back asleep until midday. I have a later work schedule. Half an hour later, I'm jolted awake by a flash of white light right in my eyes. Immediately, the light shot up, flew across my ceiling, and landed straight across the room on the router that sits directly ahead of me on my desk. If I had to guess, it was about 6 inches in diameter, not exactly an orb, just a floating light, shapeless. In my remembering, 12 hours later, it was almost like the light was being cast by an object that I couldn't see. It was cast onto my ceiling and, subsequently, the wall the router rests against. But there was no form to the source that I could see. It was as if the light was then absorbed into the router, and the whole event was over within 12 seconds. The router lights are green for reference, no sound, quiet in the room except for the fan that I run at night. My first thought, of course, went to the supernatural, mostly because I'm very interested in the subject, and have been my whole life. I consider myself a rational guy, though, so I started thinking of possibilities for what had just happened. The only one that makes any sense would be car lights coming in from outside. I have a window that looks out onto my cul-de-sac, and the neighbor across the street will sometimes leave early in the morning, usually between 5 and 6, though. But that, of course, doesn't rule out the possibility of a car at that time. There's just one problem with that. Every time I've seen a car's lights come through my window, for the last 4.5 years I've lived in this house, it's been on the side wall, not my ceiling. Every single time. I'm on the ground floor, and for a light to hit the angle it needed to hit on the trajectory the light took, it would have to come from a source within 10 feet of my window, shooting from a spot on the grass right outside. The more I think about it, the more unlikely the car thing seems, especially it hit my desk in the way it did. That has never happened before. Plus, the angle of the furniture in my room blocks a direct flash of light into my eyes from outside. I have a TV and my dresser in the way. This, to me, leaves the matter unexplained. My guess is that it was an entity of some sort, a sprite, E.T., alternate dimension conscious something. Some sort of being that manifested as light in this reality. The quickness in which it all happened. I was awake and open-eyed within 1 second of the flash, and it felt like the light had maybe messed up and gotten too close. It didn't mean to wake me, and had to make a quick retreat. What do you think? I'd love to hear other possibilities, possible debunking, questions, whatever you've got. This whole thing has me very excited, and I want whatever happened to happen again, so I can get some more info. 3. I was in Venice this time last year, and I still can't get my head around how and why this happened. I was there for 3 nights. It was my first time in Venice, and I loved it. I was there with friends, but due to our poor planning, all 4 of us stayed in different hotels. I chose one near the station, which was an intimate hotel run by a religious family. It was a classic old Venetian villa facing a canal, and the place had a chapel, a garden, and full of religious merch and decorations throughout. My room was on the 2nd floor. You had to climb 3 sets of stairs, and on the top you were met with a marble square lobby with a round table in the middle. There were few rooms around this lobby, and the rest of the rooms continued on 2 corridors that stretched on either side of the lobby. My room was one of the ones attached to this lobby, a single room that overlooked the canal. It was a simple, small room composed of a single bed and a cross above the head, a basin and a wardrobe. It was a cheap and cheerful hotel, and I slept like a baby the first 2 nights. However, on my 3rd and final night, I had trouble getting sleep, and the loud neighbor who was watching videos didn't help. I had to bang on their wall around 1 a.m., after which they stopped and I fell asleep. But I remember feeling uneasy and agitated that night. I woke up sometime between 3:30 and 4:30, which wasn't unusual for me as I don't sleep well. That's when I heard a group of loud, wailing people in the building. It echoed into my room via the hall. At this point, I remember thinking that the source of this noise was either coming from the stairs or the bottom of it. I was initially annoyed, thinking they were a bunch of drunkards who came in after a night out. Then it suddenly hit me that the hotel had a 12 a.m. curfew. It was unlikely a group of people suddenly came out of their rooms to cause a commotion. I came to my senses, which made me more aware of this mysterious wailing. It was loud, almost in despair, and crescendoed over and over, echoing into the lobby. I came to my senses and realized they were definitely not human. It's hard to explain, but something in me knew this was not alive in one form or another, and humans could not make this noise. I have never ever felt like this before. Then the wailing finally stopped. I was relieved, but what happened next is something that I will never forget. The sound resumed from the foot of my bed. These things wailing in my room at the foot of my bed, very much present, closer and louder. I don't know what happened after that. I blacked out, passed out, and when I was conscious, it was around 7 a.m. To my surprise, I didn't feel as scared, glad though, until later on in the day, where I try to recap what on earth happened. To this day, I can't explain what this is. I wasn't a paranormal enthusiast or a believer, and I believed it would stay like this until proven wrong. I'm actually easily spooked, and always thought I'd end up crying or screaming if I encountered a ghost. My theory is that my body just went into extreme fear after that thing came into my room, and simply shut down, hence the passing out feeling. I think about this pretty often, and got the chills whilst writing this. I'd love to hear what everyone thinks about it. thoughts, theories, etc. Thanks for listening. 4. This happened after a whole other crazy experience, attempting to sleep on a church stoop along 250 West that was beside a graveyard. And while that's a story for another day, it's the reason I broke my own rule. To fall asleep at dusk and wake up at dawn. Only travel during daylight. I made this rule because it's dangerous enough to walk alongside highways during the day, and would be worse at night. Was not thinking about paranormal activity. But yeah, the graveyard incident gave me such an enormous spook I took off running and back on the highway. By this time it was pitch dark, no street lamps and almost no cars. No houses or any sign of civilization either. I finally got to a point that my heart stopped pounding and was walking at a steady, relaxed pace, hoping to find somewhere to camp for the night. Then saw something that kind of looked like a ghostly white human face a couple of feet above the ground right behind the metal bumper and fence a few yards ahead of me. I looked away, thinking it was just my poor eyesight playing tricks on me. But when I was right beside it, I realized it was very much a face, solid and ghost white, empty black sockets in the eyes, with human-like features, but the face was too long to be human. I started to run, and it jumped over the railing. Picture that face I described on a matching all-white body that was the size of a large dog with the gait of a deer and either horns or antlers. I wasn't able to get a good look because I was screaming bloody murder and sprinting away from it as it was galloping after me. About 20 yards of sprinting later, I was running so fast my legs couldn't keep up, and I did kind of nosedive onto the pavement. Gave me some of the nastiest road burn that needed hospitalization after an infection weeks later. I scrambled back on my feet and glanced over my shoulder to see it jumping back over the railing, disappearing into the brush. Not far away was a driveway to a house where I fell asleep. To my surprise, the owner of the house did not call the police when she found me in the AM. Instead, she drove me all the way to a homeless shelter in a little Shenandoah Valley town called Staunton. I told her and a bunch of other shelter residents the story to ask if they knew what it was. All I got was people telling me, "Yeah, I've lived out here all my life. Seen plenty of things I can't explain," without answering the question. One guy told me about the not deer, but I looked that up, and it did not line up with what I saw. This happened over a year ago, and I'd mostly forgotten until now, but now it's really bothering me as my partner and I are considering getting a house in the Blue Ridge area. I want to know what it was, other places it might live, what attracts or repels it so I can try to avoid another encounter at all costs. 5. Back in 2017, my mother lost her battle with COPD. From a lifetime of smoking, R.I.P. Mom. She smoked up until a day or two of her death, even though she was on oxygen and had to wear a breathing mask. She did what she wanted, and kept it up until her passing, which occurred in our house. She passed away in bed while sleeping. The point being, the ashtray she used was particular to her. She only used this ashtray, and it was known to be hers. There are 3 additional smokers in the house, me, my girlfriend, and my sister. So a day or two after she died, I took possession of her ashtray for use in my little man cave and hangout room, and it was placed dead square on a coffee table in the middle of the room, with 2 couches and several chairs set around the coffee table, kind of like a dinner table. Fast forward about 2 weeks. Me and my girlfriend have friends over, and we're all having a good time, reminiscing about my mom while we all have a drink, or 3 or 4, and mid-cigarette. I go to ash my cigarette or put it out, and look down. No ashtray. In that moment I was like, that's weird, but didn't think anything of it, and put my cig out in an empty beer can, or maybe a soda can. Next day, me and my girlfriend Chantilly start cleaning up the remnants of the occasion we had the night before. Again, I start looking for my mom's ashtray, and after about 15 minutes of looking, I begin to become more and more determined to find the ashtray. I asked Chantilly if she had seen it, or better yet, moved it somewhere for whatever reason. Her response was that she'd seen it just prior to us inviting our friends over, and she said she saw it sitting on the coffee table, which is where I remembered seeing it. Now, I'm perplexed and start looking in silly places throughout the room, behind a few pieces of furniture, under the couches, on top of the TV and sound system mounted on the wall. I scoured the room, and left no stone unturned. I even took a quick look in the garbage, but to no avail. It was nowhere to be found. Mind you, this is the only room in the house, beside my sister's, that was ever smoked in. I then asked my sister if she possibly took it, borrowed it, or had moved it for any reason. "Mom's blue special ashtray?" she replied. I lit up for a second, thinking she was the responsible party, but as quick as I had gotten my hopes up, they came crashing down pretty much simultaneously, as she finished the second part of her statement. "No, I haven't touched it. I don't go in that room and have my own ashtrays. Why would I take or move hers?" Now I'm weirded out, but still think there is a reasonable explanation. I may not know what that explanation may be, but there has to be one. I proceeded to check the entire house, top to bottom, left to right, front to back, up and down. It never turned up, and I wasn't able to find it. I was rather distraught and saddened. Even though it's just an ashtray, it was still my mom's, and felt like I had lost or misplaced a part of her. I chalk it up to maybe one of our friends took it for whatever reason people come up with to justify them taking things that don't belong to them, and they just didn't know it was my mom's. I mean, it was kinda cool and certainly very, very unique. Neon blue colored and not your average dollar store ashtray. And I accepted it was gone, out of sight, out of mind, and moved on. Fast forward about a month, me and Chantilly are playing an intense round of Call of Duty, Black Ops 2, Zombies, an online match. We're super involved and wrapped up and focused on this match, talking shit over the headsets, laughing, yelling in excitement, and carrying on as gamers sometimes do. We were killing it. And I'm smoking a cig, and go to put out my cigarette, and reach out blindly to put it out in the clear glass replacement ashtray, but also saw my mom's blue ashtray sitting on the edge of the coffee table. I double took. No, I probably actually triple took, which resulted in us losing the zombies match, and instantly my mind starts racing. The obvious questions come out to Chantilly. "Where did you find it? Why didn't you tell me? When was it found?" Which were met with Chantilly's facial expression of utter shock and awe. She was just as bewildered as I was. She hadn't touched it, found it, or anything else. It literally materialized while we weren't watching or something, but we both knew without a doubt that ashtray was not on that table that morning, the night before, or the night before that, or even 20 minutes before we started our match. We had been using the glass replacement ashtray. I at first thought it was my mom playing tricks on us, due to several other strange occurrences that took place shortly after she passed. But now I'm of the belief that it was a glitch. Possibly both, I don't know. But to this day, I can't explain it, and still have the ashtray. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 354. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do press the like button, and recommend the video to friends and family if you'd be so good. And if you'd like to get the videos a little bit early, then you can support me through my Patreon, where I release the videos on either Monday or Tuesday. You can do that for as little as $1 a month. You'll also find, linked in the description, a link to the Hellfreezer Teespring merchandise page. You can get yourself hoodies and mugs and things like that. And if you'd like to support the channel on a more one-off basis, then you can make donations, or tips, during streams and videos like this one, by using a little tip jar there, which is the heart with a $sign in the middle. And while you don't have to do this, I do appreciate it, and thank you very much to everyone who has done so. Alrighty, I don't think there's any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: what is a TV show that, no matter how old you get, it always sticks with you as something very comforting? I can tell you right off the bat what mine is. Mine is the original Frasier. I've not been able to get into the reboot, and I don't think I will, but best of luck to them. But the original Frasier, it's just something I can put on no matter what mood I'm in, and it'll always feel very comforting and warm and welcoming. I feel similarly about most Star Trek shows as well. In fact, I dare say all Star Trek shows, especially if it's a new episode. Even then, it still has, that comfortable Star Trek nostalgia factor, even if it's somewhat newer material. I look forward to reading your answers in a comment below, if you wish to do so. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.